people you don't want to work with again? Just one name.
I can't believe Bob asked that. So rude.
I tell you, most people are incredibly generous and bright and intelligent people, and they realize how lucky they are working in the entertainment business. When we were doing A Million Ways to Die in the West, we're doing this big barroom scene, and Sarah Silverman comes running down the stairs and say, everybody be happy, we're working in Hollywood.
You gotta be kidding me. We're going to Hollywood?
What? No.
Oh.
We're not going to Hollywood, but almost as good. We're talking to David Brownlow.
A 40-year veteran of TV and movies, David won an Emmy, was nominated for an Oscar, worked on The Avengers, Lone Survivor, Sicario, Buffalo Girls, and dozens of other shows and films.
And what does David do exactly?
Well, he records the actors and other sounds.
Okay.
There's a boom involved.
You know what?
On a movie location or in a studio, and then, well...
You know what?
See, it's kind of complicated.
Why don't we just let David tell us what he does?
I went out to Hollywood as a young person and stumbled around and made it to the American Film Institute, the AFI, which at the time in the 70s was a pretty important place. And, everybody wanted to be the cameraman or the director, and nobody wanted to do sound. And I just happened to have studied with a sound guy in Santa Fe at this small place called the Anthropology Film Center, and I happen to know a lot about sound.
Wow.
So I sort of volunteered to do sound on these student AFI films. So it was the path of least resistance.
You knew you wanted to work in film.
Right.
But you didn't know how.
Right. I didn't know how. And
just kind of fell into the sound.
That's right, yeah.
I noticed you have 111 credits on IMDb. I did my homework.
I did too.
Uh-huh.
That one section on your personal site that says in Los Angeles, I'm like, oh my God, River's Edge, at close range. I mean, like every other one or one of my favorites.
Yeah, but the 80s were, an extraordinary time in Hollywood. And, that's when it sort of was coming out of a dark period of the 70s and things really changed. And the main driver of the change in Hollywood in the 80s, of course, was cable television and video cassettes. I tell this story a lot because it's very similar to what has happened in the last 10 years in the film business with streaming content.
Right.
So back in the 80s, if you made a film, if you didn't get it into the theaters or on network television, you had nothing. Mm-hmm. So when cable television came along, it sort of opened up this whole new market. And suddenly, so independent producers could sell their movies and get it shown on cable TV. And then, of course, video cassettes were the same way. You could make an independent film. These video rental stores were everywhere, and you could manufacture your video cassette and get your films shown. That's how the movie Dirty Dancing came about,
Yeah.
which was sort of the seminal film in its day. It was produced by this company called Vestron, which was basically 5 guys in Connecticut who bought the video cassette rights to the studio's libraries because the studios, in all of their great wisdom, said nobody's going to watch a movie at home. So these guys started selling video cassettes, and they made a fortune, and they decided they would make a movie. And the first movie they made was Dirty Dancing, which,
Right out of the gate.
yeah, in its day was like, bigger than Star Wars. I mean,
Yeah.
From what it cost them to how much they made, was phenomenal. Sort of like Easy Rider.
I sent Wally an email just yesterday saying, oh, this article's interesting. It's going to connect to something. Mm-hmm. And it just did. It was this article that said, when will we forget about John Lennon? And they were talking about collective memory, but it was very connected to the medium, right?
Uh-huh.
So what
Right.
you were just talking about, like different media will drive different things. And, that's
Right.
totally connected there.
Yeah, so, here in the 2000s, streaming has come along. And, of course, streaming is just like cable TV. It has changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
I always felt like there was much more talent available than there were films being made. I always felt there were better stories, better writers, better directors, incredible actors. And now we're seeing the fruits of all of that. We're in this renaissance of film. I mean, it's just, there are so many extraordinarily good films, really well written, really well directed, and, actors just coming out of the woodwork,
Yeah,
so.
it's fun. There's so much to see, though. You can't even keep up with it.
Yeah, that's kind of the other side of it, that there's so much content and you have to subscribe to so many services to see where it's kind of backwards. The same thing happened with music.
It's true.
Everybody suddenly could do music, so they did, and then there was a glut.
Yeah,
Wally, I know you have a list of questions, but I have one question that I'm just going to jump in with. I'm a big film person. I have appreciation for all the different parts and pieces of what make a film, right? But I have to say, like with sound design and sound mixing, the one that I really, really noticed it on where it really jumped out with me, it was Downhill Racer. Do you know that movie with Robert Redford?
Sure. Yeah, that's a long time ago.
Yeah. For some reason, I was like, but I only just saw it like 5 years ago, right? I hadn't seen it before. So I'm watching it and I'm like, oh my God, the sound on this is so cool. And that was the first one where it really just jumped out at me. But I've always appreciated it before. I don't know what it was about that one. So does everyone say, Downhill Racer had great sound mixing? Or is it just me?
No, I've never heard that.
Oh, it's interesting. There's just, especially when he's going downhill and he's got his helmet on and you hear his breathing through the helmet, and it was just...
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
I don't know, something about it really struck me.
Wow.
But I'm... Okay, so anyway, sorry,
good.
I jumped in. Wally, you go ahead.
No, there's no agenda here, Grace. But David was telling us he is a location recordist. Is that
my official designation in the union is sound mixer. And I primarily do all of the sound that's recorded on the set, called production sound. I have very little to none to do with the post sound, because obviously most films, the post sound isn't put together until after the picture is cut.
Right.
They take I record the dialogue on the set. So the whole idea is to try and keep the original performances of the actors as intact as possible.
That must be really difficult, though. I mean, what are the things that you have to consider when you're on the set? Because there's so much noise on a set.
There can be. There can be.
Yeah.
We have really good tools now. The tools are incredible, what we have. And, people are very respectful. And, when it comes time to shoot a scene, everybody gets quiet. When you look at most films, I mean, more than half of the film is a close-up. So, you know what I mean? Or two people talking. So most films is pretty simple stuff. So it gets harder and harder the more complicated it gets, and you have to keep applying more technology so that last little bit that you get, you've got everything you've got working to make the last 2% of the movie work. But, I have a crew, and it's really fun when, you get to do something really big and very complicated, and there's lots of things happening, and, it's exciting. Plus the performances, just witnessing the performances firsthand is, between me and the director, maybe the producers or something, we're the most intimately involved in the shooting of the film.
Right.
In some ways more than the camera person. So, I have an entree to a very, exclusive world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're in the front row seat. Can you talk about anything where your jaw dropped, or when you saw a performance, or?
Well, many times,
Let me bring one up.
Okay.
How about the courtroom? How about the courtroom scene and at close range?
Right.
Oh my God. When Sean Penn is calling out Christopher Walken. Oh my God, it just punches you right in the heart.
That was great.
No, you know what? I did a paper on that in grad school, so I watched it over and over, and I love it.
Well, Sean's a fantastic guy, and I've worked with him a couple of times. And I knew his brother, I knew his mother. She was in it too, close range. And I've worked with Chris Walken a bunch of times too.
Oh, really?
And so they're very cool people, and when they turn on the juice, it's cool.
Yeah, it must be.
One of your other podcasts, you were talking about celebrity. most of these people lead very normal lives. I mean, they're extremely normal people. I mean, they get up in the day and they think about the same things we do, putting on our clothes. What am I going to eat? Where am I going to go? I got to pay bills. I got to run an errand. And, in the film, they're dressed, they're rehearsed, they have a script, they go into that space, they go into a space and they're able to transform that space somehow. And that's their talent. That's the moment that they're all looking for. And, when it happens, everybody knows it, and everybody knows it. Yeah, that's it. You got it.
I mean, so I picked the jaw-dropping moment for you. However, what is one of your actual jaw-dropping moments?
Well, there have been many. The last sort of very dramatic thing that I worked on was this thing called Waco, which is about, the Branch Davidians in Waco, Texas and stuff. And, there were some moments in that where David Koresh's character is, talking to the congregation, that were pretty wow, really made the hair stand up on your arm, because it really get inside the head of a cult leader and, how he's able to manipulate these other people who are so needy. Also, I had a very interesting experience about that. Maybe doesn't speak directly to the question, but I was nominated for an Emmy for that. So it's been a long time since I was nominated for an Emmy. And so my wife and I went out and, the Television Academy has built a giant campus for themselves. And they have amazing theaters and stuff. And every week leading up to the Emmys, they bring out the different crafts. So the cinematographers all get together one night. The wardrobe people all get together one night. The art directors, the makeup people.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and the sound people we all get together for all the films that have been nominated, and you get to see the films. And by the way, the technical quality of television is, equals or surpasses anything in film. Technically, there is no difference anymore between what's being made in television and what's being done in film. So as I was telling Walt, earlier, I have very little to do with the post side of the film. So the whole film got put together, and I saw it. The first time I saw it I saw it online too, and there are parts of it. At the end there, when the kids are all down in the school bus being burnt to death, I had to turn the thing off. I couldn't handle it.
Yeah. And
so at the party after where all the sound people were there, I finally met the post sound people who did the post sound, and this woman had to cut together the screams of the children and the mothers in that room.
Oh, my God.
And, she said, it was the most difficult thing she's ever done. It gave her nightmares. It just totally flipped her out. People go through, can have to go through a lot of intensity in making a film anyway.
Well, it's interesting because I wouldn't think necessarily that the professional doing that would have that kind of reaction, Yeah. But it was like in Grizzly Man, where Werner Herzog listens to the tape of when the guy and his girlfriend are killed, and he tells his, the guy's sister, don't ever listen to this, know. But it has that same effect, I guess, when you're actually doing the sound for it, right?
Yeah.
When you start a job, what is your goal when you show up on the set the first day? Are you meeting specifications, or are you looking?
Yeah, we do prep, but my whole the main object of depending on how complicated the film is, and I haven't worked on a lot of these big complicated shows. I've done a few. The sound is sort of like the last thing that comes into the making of the film. The whole company has been together for months, building sets, rehearsing, writing the script, getting the props, getting the makeup, costumes, and stuff. So all that's been in motion for months. So in some ways, literally, it's true that first day of production is the first day that I get inserted into the process. So my main thing is just having to be totally aware of what's happening and try and get myself into everybody's train of thought and everybody's consciousness who may have been there for months. I need to get in there and figure out what I need to do to record the sound. And so that's the fun. That's the fun and challenging part of it.
Was there a Thor movie in here?
Yeah, I worked on Thor.
Yeah. Now, I'm just kind of curious. Are there any wrinkles when you're doing a lot of when they're doing a lot of the green screen stuff? Because so much of those movies seems to be green screen production.
Yeah,
right?
that's a very good point. I can tell you several things about that, but green screen is very easy because you can put the microphone right in the shot.
Oh. Yeah, I never thought of that.
Because it's David Fincher, when he made the a TV show,
Mindhunter?
No, the political TV show he did with Robin Wright.
Oh, House of Cards. Yeah.
House of Cards. He wanted perfect sound.
Oh, yeah, I was just reading that he's a real perfectionist.
So they would set up a scene, 2 people in an office or something like that. And, it'd be a wide shot. So you'd see the whole room. And he would go ahead and have the sound people put the booms right in the shot where you could see them. And they would do the scene because recording sound on a boom is much better than wearing little body mics and stuff. Then he would call cut and everybody would leave and he would turn the camera on and film the space. So down in post, he would just replace the background without the booms in the shot that had the booms in it. He sort of pioneered this thing.
Wow.
So that's very cool. So green screen is
it's nothing.
I have a TV series out now. I think it's done called Cosmos, which is a science series with this fellow Neil deGrasse Tyson, and most of it is green screen. So basically, the boom man stands right in we put him on a very long pole and he gets pretty far away because as far away as he can get from Neil because he doesn't want to distract Neil. But basically, he's in every shot, because all of it's going to be replaced. So that's kind of cool.
Right.
And
that's interesting.
But, green screen is pretty much over now, too,
The Mandalorian stuff.
Yeah. The green screen is being replaced now, too.
Okay, so I don't maybe know that much about that. So what's replacing that?
Basically, they have stages that are all LEDs. The environments are there alive on this stage. So if the Mandalorian is on another planet, they put up the other planet on the LED screens.
Oh.
So they can throw up anything.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
The inside of a spaceship, flying through space, whatever. And I think they've built a couple of these things. I think there may be one in Nashville now. But that's the real future is that you just have minimal objects in a room and they throw up wherever you are.
And in some cases on the Mandalorian, they said they don't even have to light because the light comes from the LEDs. And it's the natural way it would look because that's what it is.
So that makes it very, it makes it very easy to do sound.
Well, so I'm sorry, I'm curious. I hadn't really read about this and I'm going to have to. But so they're not replacing anything on those LED screens later. Those are actually what's being filmed. And they're so good that you can't even tell.
Right.
That's cool.
And when you move the camera, you get the perspective shift that you would get normally.
Yeah.
It's not like a green screen.
Yeah.
I'm in Florida now, but I live in New Mexico, in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And down in Albuquerque, they built 8 sound stages, and Netflix has just purchased the whole place. And they're going to turn Albuquerque into their production headquarters. And so I'm hoping that they...
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I'm hoping that they're going to build a couple of these stages, because they're talking about building some new stages in addition to the ones that are there now.
Yeah, they're spending like crazy.
Yeah. Well, he has 200 million subscribers.
Yeah.
You're right. That's a good monthly income.
Yeah.
The removal of the boom in a film now is a trivial thing, apparently. Has technology made your job easier and easier as you went along?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, everything has shrunk in size. And, now we're doing this kind of recording called a 32-bit float, which means that you can't ever record too low or too hot because basically you're sampling the audio twice. You can make a recording that looks like it's completely over-recorded, and you simply put it into a audio program and just crank it back down, and the computer knows what to do and brings it back down to an acceptable level. So that's very helpful. The other thing that we're going through a lot of is that, so almost everything we now do is wireless. Even though you record with a boom, you put a radio mic on everybody too. But the amount of the wireless spectrum that's available to us is shrinking because the FCC sells it off to make money. So they've really crunched down the amount of bandwidth that we have available. So that's an interesting thing that's going on now.
Right.
I'm just curious, I'm a huge music person. So, do you equate what you do at all with like a production engineer in the sound booth at all? Are there any similarities? Have you done any of that kind of work?
Yeah, I've worked in studios, but it's exactly the opposite.
Ah, okay.
I did a bunch of live rock and roll stuff.
Huh.
I did the Bee Gees in Dodger Stadium in rock and roll.
Yeah.
Or in studio recording. In studio recording, the engineer and the sound person controls every parameter. In the film business, the sound mixer on the set controls nothing.
Oh, okay.
So, so we're totally subservient to the camera department, the camera and lighting department, and the special effects department. All those guys, they're the guys who are running everything. So I don't get to control anything.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So in the music business, it's just the opposite. The music guys control everything. And, the sound guy, the lighting guys are subservient to them or something.
So you have to collect what you can,
yes,
as good as you can, and then turn that over. And you can't say, can we move this guy closer or any of that?
To a certain extent you can. Sometimes, it depends. It depends on the relationship. I try and say as little as possible and do as little as possible. And most sound guys are like that. We sort of hide in the shadows and stuff like that, and sort of save up whatever favors we may need for that moment when we may really need a favor. One of my pet peeves is driving in cars. Recording in live. Back in the 90s, every actor rode in a convertible.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Right? Everybody was in a convertible. It was like a nightmare. The worst place you could possibly record. And now, even now, doing car scenes, set up a car scene and the director of photography would want to put the windows down. And you're like, nobody goes anywhere in their car with the windows down. I'm sorry. It just doesn't happen.
Were you there on the Lone Survivor shoot when the guys went down the hill?
Yes.
Fell down.
Of course.
You know what scene I'm talking?
Yeah.
That was
stunt people.
One of the best effects I've ever seen. Stunts.
Yeah.
I don't know is it a movie?
Yes.
Lone Survivor.
I don't know it. Who's in that?
Mark Wahlberg.
Oh.
It's an Afghani war film. It's a true story.
Oh, okay.
It's not a chick movie, Grace.
Well, it's not chick so much. I'm just not a war movie fan in general because I love my action and my horror and all that. Yeah.
It's really good, and David got a nomination.
Oh, it was for that one. Okay, that's cool. Well, I'll have to watch it now.
I'm always amazed. I've watched that scene several times at how nobody got hurt.
I think somebody did get hurt. I'm sure a couple of times people got the broken ribs and the wind knocked out of them and other stuff. So.
Just looked brutal.
Yeah. Great film.
Must be amazing to see stuff like that happen.
Yeah.
I'll have to.
Yeah, stunts are fun. It's they take a long time to set up, and so you have a lot of sitting around time while they do these incredibly dangerous things, and most of the time nobody gets hurt.
We talked in one episode about how some actors are just made for the camera. So do you feel that way are some actors just made for sound? Are there some voices that are just perfect when you record them?
Well, there are so many really distinctive voices. Once you hear them,
Yeah.
I remember I was working on this sort of like teenage TV show about these, young people who lived and worked on a horse ranch. They introduced a new character into the piece who was this British woman, young British actor came on. She was doing scenes with the Americans. I mean, she talked so perfectly and enunciated and knew how to use her voice, whereas the Americans all sounded like they were in vowel speak. Yeah, right. So, I noticed that a lot. Also accents, I was working with Jeremy Irons, who is an incredible character. And I said, hey, Jeremy, how come all, you British actors all can do like perfect American accents, but you get an American trying to do a British accent and everybody's going to like just roll their eyes. It just doesn't.
Cringe.
Yeah. I'm like, Jeremy, how'd that happen? And he said, well, in the rest of the world, everybody grows up on American films. So we can do American accents because, we do American. As well as British, because that's the way, we've seen the world is through American films.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, yeah. That might be some place where I might go up to the director and talk about, getting the guys talking and I'm not understanding a word they say.
Wow.
They're eating their words. Mm-hmm. Or whatever. The big problem, of course, is people getting too quiet. Mm. Getting way, way too quiet.
The mumblecore.
Yeah. Sorry?
That mumblecore.
Yeah.
With all the content now that's streaming and everything, are you working as much as you possibly can? I mean, are you...
Yeah, I work as much as I want to.
Right.
For sure. There are a lot of things I don't want to work on. I've sort of had it with cop shows and stuff and violence in particular. I'm just not interested in.
Are you headquartered in LA? I mean, do you have to have a presence there, or does that not make any difference anymore?
No. So, I've gone to LA to work a couple of times. I went with Seth MacFarlane, asked me to come out, and he calls me now and then and asks me to come. I don't like going to LA, particularly now.
Right.
But, I did my time in LA in the 80s and early 90s, and, LA is an incredible place. It's the land of opportunity. It's fantastic. I went back there, we shot on the Fox lot right there in Beverly Hills. Beautiful, beautiful lot. You walk into a sound stage and it's all Art Deco. And on the side of the wall is a plaque with all the films that were made on that stage. And you read this thing and you're just in awe.
I bet.
Yeah, so, that stuff is fun in Los Angeles. But Atlanta is a huge production center now. Mm-hmm. New York really took off a couple of years ago. New York was like hot as a pistol. There are a dozen or more shows shooting in New York.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what's happening in Toronto right now. I lived in Toronto for a few years, and there were always things shooting there, but I don't know if it's, COVID aside, I don't know if the production there is still as hot as it was.
I don't know either. I know Vancouver is still happening.
Right.
Vancouver's big.
Yeah.
Atlanta's really the big place. They've got a lot happening in Atlanta. And then again, Albuquerque.
Yeah, that's interesting.
We're famous because of Breaking Bad, and we're also famous because of the Coen brothers.
They shoot everything there?
They've shot 3 or 4, they Best Picture Oscar from, and they Jeff Bridges and, they love New Mexico.
Yeah.
They're very private guys. Their sound mixer, by the way, lives in Nashville. Mm-hmm. Peter Kurland, who's a friend of mine, who's done all of their films. So they have their own little group. There are directors who have their own little group that they can kind of roll with, and the Coen brothers definitely have that.
I'm trying to introduce my son to them. We just watched No Country for Old Men and Raising Arizona, and I'm trying to break him into that.
Right. Well, I think they love, they like to come out there because they're kind of isolated, and they kind of can do their thing, and they're you wouldn't know who they were unless you knew who they were if you saw them on the street.
Right.
A lot of celebrities like that, getting out of LA to work is like a perfect thing for them.
What about worldwide? Does that affect you? I mean, I noticed that Chinese films now show up on the top 10 list,
right,
worldwide box office a lot. Is Hollywood maybe shrinking a little bit?
That's a good question. I couldn't really speak to that with much authority. But as far as I can tell, it's not. Again, because the demand for product is through the roof. Mm-hmm. Netflix wants to come out with a new feature film at least once a month. Alone. So there's Hulu, Disney's cranking up and stuff. I'm just blown away by the quality of how great films are, and how you can fall into something and it's just like mind-boggling. Like one of my favorite things that came out this year was The Queen's Gambit.
I heard that was really good.
Yeah, it was like the guy who made it had come to New Mexico and made a film miniseries here a few years ago called Godless.
Yeah, I think I saw a few episodes of that.
Yeah. Jeff Daniels, and got an Emmy or a Golden Globe for it and stuff, and it very brutal, very violent Western. So this Queen's Gambit comes out and I see that he's made it. So I turned it on and I was just like floored by the quality of the thing. It was just so well done, and so unexpected.
Yeah. The chess pieces on the ceiling are so atmospheric. It's a weird thing.
There's so many great stories out there yet to be told. So
Bob said to ask you to name 3 or 4 people who you would never work with again. Yeah. Famous names that we can recognize.
Wow, that's bad.
I couldn't tell you that.
I know.
I was doing this vampire TV series that was being produced by Seth Rogen. I can't even think of the name of it. I'll have to look at my own IMDb to tell you the name of it.
There's so many of them.
What was it called? Here, let me pull it up.
It wasn't Vampire Diaries, was it?
No, it was Preacher.
Oh, right.
We shot it on stages, a lot of location and on stages. And the stage was this interior of this church where the vampire lived. And the DP was this guy who had sort of just kind of worked his way up from being a gaffer. So from being a chief lighting guy to being the DP. And he had this whole thing about smoke. This is an incredible pet peeve of mine. A lot of people use smoke, to create an atmosphere. The accepted procedure for doing this now, in the old days, you used to just smoke the room that you were in. Then so between takes, they come and reset the smoke. Now they smoke the entire sound stage from 7 o'clock at morning to 8 o'clock at night. They just keep it in a dense fog of smoke. And even though you're like shooting in one little office inside this church, the entire soundstage is smoke. And frankly, I couldn't take it. I set myself up off of the stage and sort of ran my remote equipment into the stage and sort of worked like that. But somebody on the show called the IA safety hotline and complained because they're supposed to clear the stage out every couple of hours or something like that.
It's got to be good for you, right?
Yeah, remind me of how they make the smoke. I can't recall. I've been around it, but
they have these machines that basically have oil in them, and they heat up the oil.
Right.
And the oil burns and creates smoke. And of course,
so it's got to smell really bad too.
It smells bad, and it's bad for you. There's no way. It's like puffing on one of those electronic cigarettes all day.
All day.
So I like. So for some reason, it got around. Probably because I was the most senior person on the show, and I was saying, we got to clear the stage out, not just at lunch. We got to do it at least, a couple of times a day. So they went around, they decided I'm the one who called. And so they fired me for complaining. It was actually, I was very relieved. Yeah. I was like, thank you.
I don't have to sit in the smoke anymore.
So, that's one person that the director of photography, that guy was just, sometimes that happens that, people who've moved up in their craft are under a lot of pressure to perform.
We can Google that and find out who that was and use it in our marketing.
Put it in the episode description.
Yeah, right. Tell Bob that's the one guy.
So you mentioned David Fincher as someone who's really concerned about sound. What other directors do you feel like really have the best sense for it and really care about it a lot?
Well, I think most directors do.
All of them. Okay.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody who's not.
Who wouldn't.
Yeah.
There was a lot of talk about Christopher Nolan with Tenet and some of his other movies where there was a muddiness to the sound, and people thought it was intentional.
Yeah, he's gone through a lot of sound men. He is not happy with his sound people. Oh. Although I think Willie Burton did Tenet, and Willie's an older gentleman, And I doubt if the director messed with him very much. But if you look at his films, I think he has a different sound guy on every film. Like I know Mark Weingarten, who did Dunkirk, had a lot of problems with Chris Nolan. So even though Mark won the Academy Award for Best Sound, I know it was he struggled. Nolan did not make it easy for him.
Why would he do that? Just to make it more, I don't know, to bury the plot?
For whatever reason, they didn't marinate. They just didn't gel,
right.
Which it just didn't work out. The chemistry just wasn't there. Or Nolan just was concerned with so many other things. You can get consumed with so many things going on.
Well, in a movie like that, too, I can't even imagine how many moving parts there are.
Yeah, I mean, probably the last thing that, you want to hear from is that the sound guy says, hey, can we do this? And, just one question might be enough that it puts the guy over the edge.
Yeah. He wants to make sure Harry Styles isn't drowning in the scenes where they're getting off the boat.
Right. Exactly. There could be, there's like a lot happening.
I watched on YouTube, there was a documentary about sound design on Master and Commander. One of my favorite films.
Phenomenal. Amazing.
They cast their own cannonballs in order to
neat.
be able to record the cannons firing.
That's on streaming somewhere. I just noticed it. I'm like, I have to watch that again. That was a good one.
Brilliant film. They brought the post sound guys showed up the day after they wrapped filming, and all the special effects were all still there.
Yeah.
So were able to do the wind machines and the water being dumped and the cannons going off and the musket shooting. They were there for 3 days, 7 guys, recording all these effects.
They must have been in heaven.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Because Scorsese just wrote this whole editorial, pissed off that the streaming people keep talking about content. And he's like, it's not content, guys. It's much more than that, to make something that works. Outside of sex, the next most collaborative thing that you can do is work creatively with somebody. So that, people really want that. They want that creative group experience of sharing. And also film is still a very handmade art. You still got to put the makeup on, and you still have to make those costumes, and you still have to build the sets, and it's still a labor-intensive, one-off, one-of-a-kind, happens in the moment thing.
Well, we really appreciate.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
It was so fascinating. Oh my gosh.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, David.
I could listen to David for hours.
He had such great stories. I think I would like to go to Hollywood.
You would? Should you not have done that like 60 years ago?
You're as young as you feel. Wait tables at night.
Yes.
Go to auditions during the day.
I guess I could consider it, but I'd probably have to have a boob job.
Okay, fine.
Why not?
Anyway, we hope you enjoyed this episode. We'd love to hear from you. Tweet us at charbroiledc.
Or email us at charbroiledchats@gmail.com.
And if you have a second, jump on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts and write a quick review.
We would really appreciate it. Subscribe, like, follow, comment, and most of all, tell your friends about Charbroiled Chats.
I don't think I can go to Hollywood now. Podcasting is in my blood.
Yeah, you're a podcasting pioneer.
I mean, what would I be, in a Thor movie or something?
That's a thought. I don't know. I don't know how many leading men who are, around 72 that they're looking for right now, but you never know.
Yeah. I'm going to stick with the podcasting.
All right.